have no hope.
Yeah. Okay. All right. How we doing?
They could.
Good. I
Still
have
got
to
that
make sure.
weird glow there.
Yeah, I have to make sure of what I'm coming through, Yeti
Hmm.
speakers. Okay. Are we ready?
I am.
That makes one of us. All right.
Glasses on today.
I don't know what I'm going to say. I can always redo the beginning later if I screw it
Yeah.
up. I almost feel like when I screwed up. Okay. Hi, this is
Wait.
Barb. Whoop. Okay. Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics of View Through the Veil. Today we're talking to Shari Peterson. And Shari was brought up in a small Iowa town of 400 residents where everything was practical, everything was black and white. Although she had some psychic hits through her earlier life, she didn't pay a whole lot of attention to them until they became very real on United Flight 811, where the heavens and the earth came together. Let me put it that way. Welcome to the show, Sherry. I'm so glad to
Hi.
have you on.
Thank you, Barb. It's so nice to see you
Dad's great. It's great.
again.
I know. I know Sherry and I actually met because I saw her book. She has a book out, A View from 13F, about her experience on the plane. And just to tell you, this United Flight 811, it happened in February of 1989. And the cargo door and blew a huge hole in the plane while they were 40,000 feet above the ocean. So I'll just give you
24,000.
44,
24,000.
oh, 24,000. To me, after a certain amount,
Well, it's still 5 miles or 4 miles.
yeah, yeah. And so, that's a little teaser, but Sherry and I first met. I work in for heaven's sake metaphysical store, and she came in and she was going to give a talk and she put her books out. And I looked at it and said, and called her and said, I know someone on that flight. I knew Rose Hartley, who was on that flight. She had just retired and was going on the flight the trip she always planned for,
Mm.
a trip of her lifetime. And unfortunately, Rose was in one of the seats that got sucked out and into the engine. So of course I had to call Sherry right away and say, I know one of the people. So I'm going to shut up now and invite Sherry to talk on the show and to tell us about this flight and what opened up for her in a
Um,
rude way.
well, it got my attention.
Yeah.
This is the book.
And we'll put this on our YouTube
Yep.
station and also in clips that we'll send out.
Yeah, thank you. Barb, I can't even tell you when you called me that day or contacted me and mentioned that you knew someone, one of the 9 people that passed
Hmm.
away that day. I mean,
Right.
I've had a lot of people call me with some sort of a connection, but that one took my breath away, and we had
Right.
to meet. We just had to meet
Right. It
because
was so odd that I
it
knew
was,
somebody. Yeah.
yes.
Right.
And she's from New York. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't even a Denver person where we live
Right.
now. It was somebody that was completely, I don't know. It was
Separate from
definitely,
you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And
Right.
and anyway, it was very much kismet. And
Hmm.
it was nice to share the experience of that flight because, like you said, it was her trip of her lifetime. And oh
Right.
my gosh.
And she
But
had just retired and
oh
had a
my gosh.
retirement party, and this was her trip. And it was like she was going to New Zealand, I think,
Yeah.
Auckland.
Yeah. Our
Yeah.
first stop was
Yeah.
Auckland.
Right, right. And she had saved and,
Oh,
planned and
yeah.
oh my God. And in a way it was a trip of her lifetime.
Was she traveling alone?
I don't know. That I
Yeah.
don't remember.
I
Probably
don't.
not. She probably had somebody she was going
Yeah.
with,
I
but
just
I
remember
don't
those.
know. She's pretty independent.
Yeah, well, it was
Yeah.
always Rose and not any other name now that I think about it, because
Right.
there were nine people that died, and one of, that I
But
worked at. Go
before
ahead.
we go there, I'm
Yeah.
thinking we're going to go right into the middle of it, and I want you to bring it from the beginning because
Okay.
we're going to hop right into the middle of it,
You,
and we've done this before.
I know. Like, here's what
So
happened. Yeah.
yeah. So you were in you left Iowa and you went to Hawaii and Florida and all different places you lived, and then you came to Denver and you
Yes.
joined the travel industry. And
Yes.
so you were well aware of planes and all of that. And this was just another work flight where
Right.
you did tours and or took care of groups and you were going to meet people in Australia, a group that you would take care of.
Yes, for a week. So
Right.
that was part of my job. My mother, little Iowa farm wife mother, who was a rock star, but she used to tell people I was a paid escort and traveled with executives all over the world.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'm
But
like,
interest in you went
whoa.
way up, I'm sure.
Well, I was like, I heard her say it, and I went, hold on, we must talk because
Yeah.
it's a better way to say it
Yeah.
as a
Right.
tour guide. Anyway, so
Yeah.
that was my job. So it was pretty routine for me to jump on a plane. I was
Hmm.
going, the itinerary was Denver, LA, Honolulu, Auckland, Sydney.
Right.
And it's a long
That
thing.
is long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's long. It's a long
Right.
day. And I
Right.
say the word day lightly.
Mhm.
But when I boarded the 747, which was the two-story aircraft,
Okay. Before you boarded, though, this catches my attention. You were walking with a friend to the plane.
oh yes,
Yeah.
there was a lot of. I've always had this bent that you mentioned, Barb, of the
Hmm.
psychic stuff, and and I thought it was kind of everybody had these precognitions or whatever. I didn't know that that probably wasn't true, but the night before I left,
Hmm.
a friend of mine pulled me aside and told me, "You are gonna," and she's it was a metaphysical class, and she said she was the teacher. She pulled me aside, and she never did this. She was very um, she's from New York.
Yeah. She
So
maintained her boundaries, let's
yeah,
say.
thank you. Well said. And she pulled me aside and held me, which was unusual, and said, "You're going to be so glad to be home from this trip." And I thought, oh, for the first time ever, you are so wrong because one, it's Australia, and
Yeah.
two, I was not in a good place in my marriage at home. I was so glad to get away for a week. And I thought, oh boy, she's never been that wrong.
Hmm.
And I but then I thought, well, that's weird. And the next day, my friend is walking me to the gate back in the day before we had all the
Yeah.
security.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't like you going on United. I want to change you to Frontier, or pardon me, to Continental. And another New
Hmm.
Yorker, by the way. And she was adamant about it. And I said, I can't. It's my luggage is gone. I'm walking to the gate. I'm about to board. And she said, I just don't like it. She goes, okay, have a good trip. Have a safe trip. And I'm looking at her going, have a safe trip. That's like you going to the grocery store, Barb. And I go,
Yeah.
bye, Barb. Have a safe trip to the grocery store.
Yeah. It is weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And I
weird.
thought, okay, that's weird. And got on the
Hmm.
plane and kind of scratching my head and whatever. I
But the
get
funny part is after a lifetime of psychic hits, you still don't pay attention.
right. Well, I was focused on work,
Yeah, yeah.
that's so
We
separate
we
from
all
this.
do this though.
Yes. And that
Not
is,
it doesn't catch our attention for some reason.
and
Yeah.
that's a lesson for everybody to,
Hmm.
when you get those things, do stop for a second and go, okay, that happened for a reason.
But
So,
what's the
but
message here? I'm
yeah,
getting a message.
whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're getting my attention. So please remember that, everybody else but me.
Yeah.
I forget.
Right.
But
Don't do what I do. Do what
yeah,
I
don't do.
say.
Yeah. So in Honolulu, when I'm boarding the flight, they again, as an airline person, we board last because everybody gets the good seats and then we get what's left over. It's just the way it's been. And you
Right.
never argue with anybody. It's just, keep it cool.
Yeah.
So I'm have my boarding pass and I'm in 9F and I get on and as I get on the flight, I remember looking at the door and going, wow, this is an old airplane. I hope it makes it. Ha ha.
But another hit.
Another hit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I go to my seat. walk up and it's in business class, and there's a gentleman in my seat, and he's got his jacket off, and he's in a beautiful red sweater. I remember that. And he had a cocktail, and he was chatting with his seatmate. And I said, I'm sorry, but you're in my seat. And showed him my boarding pass. He goes, I'm not moving. Oh, okay. So the flight attendant's going, come on, we got to push back. So she said, just sit anywhere. So I went to the first open aisle seat, which was 13F.
Hmm.
And it was an aisle seat at the bulkhead, meaning the wall was behind me and the galley was behind that. So there was nobody
Yeah,
behind me. So normal takeoff, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning in Honolulu, and it's a really light, rainy, that real tropical rain that's so
the
delicious.
mist. Yeah.
Yes, it's so beautiful. And everything's pretty normal. We take off, and it's, out of Honolulu. And I learned this later, but the captain, instead of taking off in a straight up trajectory, had to go around a thunderstorm. So he was going this way instead of this way. That
Okay,
makes
he was
sense.
going more horizontal rather than,
Yeah, he was going
yeah.
around it instead
Keep
of
in
straight
mind,
up.
some people are listening and can't see you.
Oh,
Some
thank
people
you.
will also see you, but not everybody.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, that's
Those
how.
walking the dogs are out there listening. Yeah.
Okay, good point. So we're probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes into the flight, and I loosened my seatbelt. I never took it off because I used to hire flight attendants, and everything seemed pretty normal. And all of a sudden, I get out my book and I'm starting to read, and this young man whispers in my ear loudly. He goes, "Tighten your seatbelt. You're in for the ride of your life." And I went, "What?" I turned around and looked immediately, and there is
Hmm.
not a person standing there. And the lights are still on. We're still climbing out. Nobody should really be, no passengers should be up moving around. And
Right.
I thought, that's weird. And then I went, wait a minute, that is not a crew instruction. They don't tell people that, especially
Hmm.
one person. And it
Right.
kind of freaked me out. And I thought, okay, that's one, weird, two, prophetic sounding. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay. And I gave my seatbelt a big tug and tightened it as tight as I could get it. I thought, I don't know what that was about, but I did listen.
Yeah. Thank God you're starting to
Oh,
listen. Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
saved my life. And I stuck my thumbs in it like a gunfighter, and I thought, I got to calm down a little bit. My breathing started getting a little, I thought, whoo, bring it down a notch.
Hmm.
And within just seconds of that, I could feel under my feet things were grinding. There was a bump and grind. And I thought, oh, hold on, that's not normal. That's not
Yeah.
normal. That's not normal. Boom. Side of the airplane's just gone in the blink of an eye.
Wow.
Blink of an
Wow.
eye. I'm looking out, and that there's people missing. The whole interior of the airplane's been taken out. I was pulled forward so forcefully that if I hadn't tightened my seatbelt, I would have been pulled out of my seat, no
Hmm.
doubt. And chaos, and the engines are on fire. All this happened in less time than it took me to describe that.
Right. And
And you
and
could
thank God that was the one thing I asked you about, Rose. In my mind, it happened so fast that she couldn't know that she was one of the people pulled out.
You
Yeah.
didn't even know.
Good. I am
No.
so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah.
It literally, they just disappeared. It wasn't even, oh, look at them go. They just
Yeah.
disappeared.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there were 8 people in the seats. So what had happened is the cargo door malfunctioned. The
Mm.
locking mechanism just started opening in air, which is a problem. I mean,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they lock it down and everything, I know how secure everything is.
Hmm.
But as a side note, the Federal Aviation Department Association, whatever,
Hmm.
FAA, they absolutely knew about this. They had a directive out to get it fixed. They had 30 days to fix it. United hadn't gotten around to it, and it was a $3,000 fix. And
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
hadn't done it. So when this incident happened, they grounded all the 747s and said, you got to fix it now.
Oh,
So it was
yeah.
totally
After that.
preventable. On top of everything else, this
Yeah.
didn't have to happen.
Right.
So the cargo door malfunctions, and when it lifted, it started on the side of the aircraft, and the wind caught it and peeled it up like a banana.
Mm.
So as the door lifted up, it took the floor and those 8 seats where your friend was seated
Right,
out immediately. And it took the guy in 9F that didn't give up his seat to me,
right, right. And
which,
wasn't his seat, you said the arm was just
yeah, the
pulled.
arm was bent
Yeah,
out. He was so
yeah.
forcefully removed.
So it
So
took him, but not his seat that time. That one.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah. Oh
So
my
he went
God,
out.
yeah. And
And
he
the seat,
probably didn't have a seatbelt on at that point, I
probably
would
not, or
think.
it was
Yeah,
loose.
yeah,
Same thing, it
yeah.
was probably loose. He just loosened it like most people do.
Right.
But the 8 people, and that's why the engines were on fire. There was a lot of debris, and there were no oxygen masks, there was no light. It was, like I said, 1 o'clock in the morning, and now we're
Mhm.
above the clouds. So it was a beautiful, when you looked out, I'm
But you could
thinking,
not do anything but look out.
right. And you don't know what's going to happen next. Are we going to break up in the sky? We certainly can't land like this. I mean, we're over water. I've worked for the airlines. I knew we would never make it back. There
Right,
was no reason we should have made it back. So
right,
that's how smart I was, right? I knew it, but here we
right.
are. But,
How about the people around you?
um,
That were the remainders.
Yeah, the also rans.
Yeah.
Seated next to me was a gentleman, his 6-year-old daughter, and his wife. And I looked over. Well, I grabbed his leg at one point because I thought I was going next. I mean,
Mm.
you didn't know, is the hole just gonna, and
Yeah,
that was
get
my
bigger.
instinct to
Yeah.
grab his leg and hold on. And then I thought, I got to sit up and see what's happening. And next to me were the 2 people that didn't go out. And they were, of course, in shock. The wife was seated at the window, and she was kind of a bloody mess. And then the gentleman was next to me, and I reached across the aisle and held his arm
Hmm.
and trying to get him to look at me so he wouldn't look down. And they were
Look down straight
obviously,
into the ocean.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and their
Yeah.
feet are dangling out the hole. They had
Oh
no
my God. And you
floor.
told me that their seats were bouncing, like
They
we're
were
going to
bouncing
give
because they
out
were
at any
broken.
moment. Yeah.
And so I'm holding on to it and I'm thinking, oh my God, at what point do I let go? I mean, I
Right.
can't go with them because that doesn't do anybody any good. And then I
Right.
look, and the flight attendant is under their seat. And you know how big that space is,
Right.
not very big. And
Hmm.
she had been in the galley, and when it blew, it sucked her under those seats.
Wow.
So she's all contorted and under there and looking at me like, what is going on? And you can't talk. It's so
Yeah.
loud. What are we doing? 380 miles an hour, 400
And
at
you
that
had
point?
wind at that point coming in
Yeah,
at you.
that's the
Yeah.
wind. So what, 380? And the biggest hurricane at the time was 190 miles an hour. And we were
Mhm.
well over 300. And I think it was around 60 below or some ridiculously cold.
Right. I don't know how you survived that part alone,
Oh,
being able to
no.
breathe.
Well, that's just it. You couldn't. It felt like someone was standing on your chest.
Mm.
So, because the entire interior, and you can look it up, people, there's photos, the entire interior had been sucked out. So, we're down to the metal studs.
Yeah.
And then there are wires that were hanging down. And when they
And they
hit, they
were sparking, you said, yeah.
sparking. So, right then you'd think, oh my gosh, it's going to be another explosion.
Hmm. Oh
So,
my
I
God.
mean, talk about your stress level.
Yeah. But
This
how
is
does
just,
your mind even take that in?
that's it.
That you're flying at 24,000 feet or you're above the ocean, let me put it that way, looking down, and you now have this huge hole that and
And
you're
fire.
strapped, yeah, and fire and you're strapped into a seat. How does your mind even accept that?
It doesn't. I mean, it still blows me away. And part of what happened, which was really interesting, is I closed my eyes because I was thinking about my family.
Hmm.
See, it kind of still gets me emotional these years later. And I'm thinking, oh, and my sister worked for the airlines, and my niece worked for the airlines. So
Hmm.
they all had a pretty good knowledge of what was going on. Anyway, I thought, oh my God, they're going to think this was so awful because we're either going to crash or burn, or I'm either going to die by a shark or drown, tangled up in wires. I had all these scenarios going
Oh
through
my
my
God.
head,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like, this is how I'm going to die. And it's such a weird conversation when you resign yourself to, wow, what was I, 38 then? I said, this is how I'm gonna die.
Right. This is it. Yeah.
This is it. And I thought they're gonna think this was so awful to go down in a burning airplane. And I thought, it really isn't that bad. It got very peaceful then. And I thought,
Yeah.
I
It really
hope,
wasn't that bad.
I know, it
Yeah.
doesn't even make sense to say it out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. So a
But
calmness came over you?
a calmness. And I realized at that point, I thought, I don't want them crying and feeling bad about this because it's actually quite peaceful when you're about to die. And I told myself, I said, when I get back, because I told myself maybe there's a chance, but there isn't. But
Yeah.
I thought, dead people don't want funerals, they want celebrations. I want
Mhm.
people to drink beer and talk about the time we skinny dipped in Hawaii or something. I
Right.
mean, talk
Right.
about the fun stuff and laugh and celebrate me. I don't want people mourning me.
And the
So,
weird thing is you're sitting up there in this situation thinking that.
yes, because
Yeah.
there's no alternative.
Hmm.
There's nowhere to land. Uh,
Right. Right.
you
And
know,
there's no way at that point because, half the plane is missing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
structurally damaged. We're fully loaded with fuel. There's no way they can dump enough fuel. I think Captain told me it would have been 45 minutes, and he couldn't keep it in the air for 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, and here's the tip. I made it back. I survived
Yeah.
because I had people actually say, "What happened? Did you make it back?" And I look, wait a second, and go 1001, 1002. Yes, we made it back.
Right. Guess what? I'm real. You're not talking to a ghost.
Yeah, yeah. Or
That
maybe
is
you are.
funny though. I
Yeah.
can see myself doing that, getting
Yes.
into it so much with, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And a thing that happened too, there was a total near-death experience, or I don't even know how to describe it, but all the things that happened, there were so many things that happened that were not of this world. And
Hmm.
one was when I was in that kind of a space of, wow, this isn't that bad. And then all of a sudden it became so quiet. And you can't imagine how loud it was. Cannot imagine.
Yeah,
You
with the
can't even
wind and
recreate it.
yeah,
And the engines and the
yeah.
whistling and it's just anyway, it got really quiet and I closed my eyes and I could just feel this unbelievable peace and love. And then I could see in my mind's eye, as far as I could see, little beings, and in unison, they were all going, or not unison, but they were all going the same words. We got you, we got you, we got
Hmm.
you, we got you. Oh God. And I
Yeah,
thought, holy cow, I'm
right.
ready for this. This is
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Now let me ask you here because there are going to be skeptics who say that was shock. You were in shock. But your belief is no, no, no. You saw the other side.
I was in shock. Then I went to something else. I agreed,
Mhm.
there was shock, but this was something totally different because how did it get so quiet? And
Yeah.
in shock, you don't come out of it while you're still in the incident. I would
Yeah.
assume, that
Hmm.
aftershock is when you get into a place where you can get over the shock. This was all going on at the same time. And at
Right.
that moment, I thought, oh my God, I absolutely think, and the colors and, oh, I mean, you can read NDEs, near-death
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
online. They're fascinating. And I'm telling you,
Hmm.
it's so true. And it put it in perspective how heavy and it's like this is definitely a school versus the reality of what is waiting for us.
Right. Right.
There's
The
no,
home and we're
yeah.
away.
So when
Yeah.
they talk about you learn your lessons on earth, they're not kidding. It really is
Hmm.
a place of um, we're going to send you there kind of thing. I'm trying to find the earth words like we talked about,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we're going to send you there. You're going to get banged around, but then you get to come home, So you go to
Mhm.
school, you get 1 through 12, and then you graduate. So that's kind of what, I mean, that's the closest example I can come up with.
Right.
And um, it changes you in a lot of ways that you can't put words to when you actually see that and go, they're not kidding. This really is the most amazing
Hmm.
um, anyway,
Experience. Yeah.
so I
Well, not
needed
only
that
that, but
apparently.
going to the other side. It's
Yes.
yeah, seeing it.
And it happened again. Well, there was a lot of activity on the flight or during this, and flight attendants had portable oxygen masks because nobody had them. They didn't have enough for all the flight attendants, so they were sharing, but they were trying to clear the aisles. And, they
Just
went
the
into,
fact they were up and moving was
yeah,
shocking to me.
yeah,
Yeah.
they had to because otherwise they're going to sit there and die. I mean,
Hmm.
that's what they told me. They said, we just went into automatic. Here's what we need to do.
Right.
And, so long story, he turns it around and in the distance out of the hole, I came back into my body and it was such a jolt. It was like, oh, and what brought me back
But,
is I could
but
see, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Go
In my
ahead.
mind's eye, I could see this enormous hand come under the airplane, and the plane, a 747, holds 338 passengers and 18
Yeah.
crew on
A
our
lot of
flight.
people.
A lot
Yeah.
of people. It was bigger than my town.
Yeah.
Town I grew up in. So I could see this little bitty airplane and this enormous hand. It just went under it. And I thought, oh my God, thank you, God. You're going to get us back. And I thought, oh, nuts.
Right.
Yeah, yay, boo,
I don't want to go back, huh?
Yeah, it was like, yay, we're
Yeah.
going to be saved. Oh,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's when I kind of came back into what was happening around me.
But
And
weren't there angel wings that came
that
around
comes
you?
later.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
jumping
all
to your
right.
story.
Nope, that's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so we do, I can see the island in the distance. Again, I see lights and I go, oh my God, we may make it back. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, they're calling for rescue, um,
Yeah. So
retrieval.
you've
They're going
got
to be
the automatic thing going on
yeah,
too of
thinking
what's
they're
going
going
to
to be
happen.
bringing out boats for picking up body parts and blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
But all of a sudden I thought, man, maybe we will make it back. So we do come in and land. And of course, the flight crews are going around that were not totally injured. Every single crew member was injured, by the way,
Hmm.
but they were getting us in the, crash position. And I remember thinking, if the last thing I'm ever going to see is not going to be my own butt. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting up during this
Yeah.
landing.
Wow. Yeah.
And I looked around and everybody else was in crash. And I thought, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to watch this because
Yeah.
I never landed with an open window before. So it's
Yeah. And it wasn't even a window. You said you could drive a Mack truck through
oh,
this
it was like
hole in the
yeah,
side
I
of
think it
the.
was like 18 by 10 or something. I
Oh
mean,
my God,
it
that's
was
huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was huge. And the
Yeah.
photos, you could see the enormity of the damage and then
Hmm.
little bitty people around it. It shows you
Right.
how big it
Right.
was. It was from the cargo
And these
door.
pictures
The,
are in your book.
yeah,
Yeah.
in the book. And you
Yep.
could Google United 811 and you could see them as well.
Hmm.
But as we're coming into land, they of course had cleared the airport and every plane was on hold over Hawaii. So it was
Right.
really, and as we're coming into land, and again, I've got the open hole right there and I'm watching
Right.
it and I could see the fire trucks all down the runway. And I thought, okay. And when he landed, it was perfect,
Hmm.
absolutely perfect, which is impossible. It's impossible. He even said that.
Right.
And our captain it was his last flight ever. He was retiring. He was flying
Not
to Sydney.
because of this, it was planned.
No, it was his retirement flight. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was a former airline, or pardon me, Air Force fighter pilot and a glider pilot. So those guys
Hmm.
have massive skills anyway. I mean, pilots have to, but these guys had, he
Yeah.
said the
Yeah.
glider experience was what helped him the most. But
Hmm.
anyway, excuse me, we came in and landed, and when we hit, I fully expected us to break apart because of the structural damage, and it
Right.
didn't.
Right.
And he, of course, stopped it right away because he didn't want to run off the runway. And, he had a lot of wing, because he didn't have the full engines, he didn't have full brakes, and a lot of mechanical stuff that the pilots want to know that your listeners probably aren't interested in. But then we evacuated, and they got 338 passengers and 18 crew members off in less than 90 seconds.
That's amazing too.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was such a good job. They did such a good job. And down the slides. So,
I remember you telling me too. You
so you
saying women should never wear high heels
don't wear
because when they
heels.
put you on those slides or whatever, they hit you in the back so your feet come up.
Yeah, they put you, they shove you in the back so you kind of go up and your feet go up. And if they don't, if your heel catches in the slide, you're going to break your leg or your
Oh my
ankle, or,
God. Yeah.
and you get to the bottom, and now what? You're supposed to run away from the incident.
Yeah, they yell run. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're laying there in a crumpled heap, and the next one behind you, now you've got a mess because the guys at the
Oh,
top don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so don't wear heels
Yeah.
or don't crash. Either way.
Oh,
But
yeah, that's better. Don't
yeah,
crash.
so they hit you in the, and then when they get to the bottom, it's run. And so I ran track and I took off running and I was halfway to Kauai. I was just,
Yeah.
and all
Uh,
of a sudden I hear these Hawaiian accented guys, and it was fire crew, and I didn't run, but they're like, "Where are you going?" And I was like,
yeah, yeah.
look at that.
Big,
And
yeah, big fire back there.
hello.
Yeah.
And I just crumbled on the runway, and I was all by myself, and I was away from the plane.